Hey teachers, Sarah Donovan here. I have thought a lot about task 3 and thinking about the language that PPAT uses and how that aligns with the language that we've been using in our coursework. And I think it fits really nicely, but some of the terms seem to have a slightly different meaning. And so I thought I would help by creating a lesson plan template that you can use to design to design your lesson for task 3. That will then make it very easy to write up all the text boxes. So we have some great resources for writing up task 3, but I think if we use this lesson plan template, it will help set you up for success. So I hope it's not more confusing. So let me just show you, and I'm going to talk you through it. And if it's useful, great. And if it's not, please let me know if there's a way I can make it more useful, or even better, if you have another way. Okay. So let me first show you. There's a PPAT lesson plan format, and they have standards, learning objectives, assessment, lesson structure, instructional strategies, learning activities, resources, technology, accommodations, classroom management, extensions. So this lesson follow-up activities. So this lesson plan exists, and it uses a lot of the language that Dr. Nowell shared with us in our first meeting. And it's pretty straightforward, so you can create a template like this. I have done something similar, and this is an editable document. So I'm just going to talk you through it, and I hope that it's useful. So first, co-teaching model. And if you recall, you can do this with your teacher, or so if it's relevant, if you are co-teaching, it might be helpful to think about the way that you and your teacher are working together. And this will give you something very specific to write about in your analysis of the lesson. So name your co-teaching model. There are 6, hopefully you can still see this when I opened it up. There's 6 different approaches to co-teaching. One teach, one observe, one teach, one assist. You may remember this from our teaching reading course where you did a co-teaching of a nonfiction strategy. So make sure you type, add in here what co-teaching model you want to use if you're going to co-teach with your person. Materials, Oklahoma ELA standard, just put in 1 or 2 or 3 for this lesson. So if you have a reading 1, but then also speaking standard, put those 2 in for your grade level. Content focus. So if you're in the middle of a unit of a literary period, like transcendentalism, if you're working on a particular genre, such as Gothic literature, or if you're working on a particular writing mode, such as argumentative or personal narrative, maybe it's not directly what you're teaching, but this might lend itself to that. So it's helpful. Now, this instructional strategies, so Dr. Nowell talked about, well, we didn't get a chance to unpack this, but instructional strategy, and I've added this word family. There's kind of 5 central instructional strategy families inside which there are activities. So there's experiential learning, such as field trips, simulations. There's direct instruction, which is like lecture, drill, and practice. It's also demonstration. So the gradual release model actually fits into direct instruction. There's indirect inquiry. So it's problem solving, conceptual mapping, reflection. There's cooperative learning, which is pretty easy to identify, such as small group work or Socratic seminar or fish bowls. Think, pair, share, jigsaw, and then independent study if you have students working at their desk, creating a concept map. They might be doing something on a computer, such as like an interactive computer kind of thing, or journaling, or writing a report, or doing research, those kinds of things. And then there's learning stations, which is a mixture of all of these different families. So you might have stations, which I've done before, right? Learning activity. So if you have a learning structure like walk and talk, or a gallery walk, or a concept map, or so all those things in parentheses above, all these parentheses, those are activities. So what's in bolded is the instructional strategy family, and then what's in parentheses, those are activities. So learning activities. Okay, then learning goal. So students will be able to, so by the end of this hour or this 40 minutes, or if you're doing just the intro, students will be able to write a one-page reflective essay. Students will be able to write a half a page listing the 5 reasons for this. Students will be able to contrast in group discussions. So are they going to write something? Are they going to speak something? Are they going to create something? So I think you should address each of these bullet points. So remember, Dr. Nowell said the students actually have to make something that they give to you. So they're going to give you their write-in, they're going to give you their table of contents, they're going to give you their annotations, they're going to give you their notes, or you're going to take pictures of them. Okay. And the essential question is related to, why are we doing this? Remember, like, why does this even matter? We write to express ourselves. We read literature to understand representations of humanity, these. So there's a link there if you're looking for them. Key terms of vocabulary. So if you're going to have to pre-teach some vocabulary, or going to use context clues for the vocabulary, whatever you're reading or looking at. So you might say, I'm going to talk about mode. So you're going to pre-teach mode is argument, narrative, informational, or you just use the language and expect the students to understand it in context. So some key terms. The learning environment, this is where the PPAT wants you to, and we think about this all the time too. What are the groupings? I think it's really important for you to strategically put people into groups so there aren't cliques and side conversations, so that it's nurturing community. And also it saves time, so students don't have to decide, unless that's part of your lesson where you want students to make decisions about their groups. How are the desks going to be set up? If it's cooperative learning, then there's partners or small tables. Maybe you have stations, like some people are going to be in one small corner doing something. Some people are going to be in a U shape. Some people are going to be on the floor talking. Like, what is the learning environment? This is where the differentiation, what kind of misconceptions students might confuse mode, argument, and narrative. Students might be confused about point of view and perspective. Students might be confused about first and third person. Students might be confused about how to start. May not be like writing their personal narrative, but they start with, it is more like informational instead of a story. And then student 1 and student 2, remember Dr. Nowell said she wants you to think about, and the PPAT wants you to think about 2 particular students. They don't have to have IEPs or 504s. They can be high achieving students, or students who have sensory needs, or students who need extra support for their talking. Maybe they need a template for their discussion points. Maybe they need you to check in. I should put a link here I'll put a link here for differentiation. That would help. Technology use. Remember, Dr. Nowell said their PPAT is this task 3 in particular needs students to be using technology. So this isn't necessarily you, but how are students using technology? Are they doing a virtual field trip? Are they using a collaborative document? Are they recording themselves? Is there a digital exit ticket? Are they doing a peer conference and highlighting commentary and analysis? So how is the technology use happening in this lesson? And then I've changed colors because now we're getting into the actual lesson plan. So how are you going to begin? Remember, we want to, and I have things in here to help you with your analysis. So as a routine, we want to begin class in a similar way. We begin with a write-in, or we begin with a a pair share, or we begin with a read in, or we begin with a video or a viewing or a guided, however you're beginning as a routine so students know what to do when they come into the classroom. But your routine can also be tapping prior knowledge or having a picture that piques curiosity when they come into the classroom. So whatever your goal or lesson is for the day, that you have students are coming in and they see something or they know what to do or they're talking to a neighbor, and all of that relates to your goals. So if you have a speaking goal, they're coming in to have a casual conversation, kind of get warmed up. If it's an analysis goal, there's a picture and they're like looking at it to try to figure out something. If it's a writing goal, they're coming in and getting started with low stakes writing. So something at the beginning. And then just very clearly stating your goal for the class. 15 seconds here, really quick. Today we're going to do this. Here's our goal. By the end, I'd like you to produce this. So this reinforces your essential question and your learning goal for the day. You probably also have it written on the board. Then here's the actual lesson. So if you remember, we would have like teachers doing something, the students doing something. So you can write in, I think it's helpful to write in what you're going to say and how you're going to move through it with anticipated time for each. 5 minutes for this, 10 minutes for this, 20 minutes for this. And then when you talk about it, maybe it took longer, maybe it went by faster when you're writing about it. And then I'm back to a few kind of technical things. Actually, I'll put this in a different color because it's not part of the lesson. It's still a little bit part of the planning. But what are the things that you're going to do to reinforce their practice or reinforce the goals? What are some things that you're going to say? So while students are practicing, you're going to walk around the room and say, tell me what you're working on. What makes you say so? How might that be? So those follow-up questions, right? Identify something that you think is interesting. That's low stakes bloom. Why might that be? There's analysis, higher stakes bloom. You might say, how are you getting started? What are some ways you're going to make sure everyone takes a turn? So the things that you're going to do during the lesson, once everyone's practicing, or while everyone's doing their quick write, you're going to conference with them. Tell me what you're working on. How did you make that decision? So this is a great place for some questioning. And then you have something to talk about in your analysis. The next is tracking progress. How are you going to track the progress of students? This is assessment. And we did this also in our nonfiction practice strategy lesson that you did. As students are working toward the goal, how are you tracking the progress? If students are doing the write-in, how are you tracking the progress? So maybe you take out your clipboard or you take out your notebook and you kind of run through the list and you're doing a visual check on everyone to make sure that they're writing. And if they're not, then you move over and you say, tell me what's going on. Are you having a hard time getting started? How can I help? Where do we go for ideas? Or if students are working in groups, you have your checklist and your goal is for cooperative learning or listening skills. And you go over to the group and you say, ooh, I noticed that you're working really well. You're listening to each other. You're making progress to your goal. Or you go to a group and there's lots of chatter. Say, how's it going? Working toward your goal. What do you need? How can I help you? What should you do? What kind of steps can we take? So this is, again, if you have a strategy for tracking everyone, for keeping track of everyone, for monitoring their progress, this is a method that's really important. This is part of the assessment during the activity, right? And then the last is kind of going back to, it's pink again or purple again. This is the closure of the lesson, an optimistic closure, reflecting on the essential question, the learning goal, some forward thinking. How are you going to make sure that all students made progress on that, what they created, made progress or created something, right? This is where they're going to turn it in. Maybe write a little sticky note reflection. Return to the journal. What did you learn today, or how did it go today? Maybe they all submit to Google Classroom, but they have to write you a little note about their favorite part of today, or what they learned that they didn't know before, or something that they're still struggling with, or a question that they have for you. Something about what they created and what they learned and how it meets or makes progress toward your essential question or your learning goal. So I think if you can plan this out a little bit before you do your one-day lesson, you're going to have everything in this document that you need in order to fill out all the tasks for task 3, all the little text boxes. And then you're going to have a lot in here that you can talk about when you're doing your narrative or your write-up, right? It's going to make sure that you have collected, procedure. I'm going to add one more thing here. Transition to collect or submit artifacts, assignments, something there, right? Like, now turn this in, making time to make sure that you don't run out of class time in order to take the things that you need. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to be helpful for you. I think it should be. I've looked through task 3 for all the different things that you need. And so I think if you plan this document really well, then you're going to have everything that you need. So I hope it works for you. Let me know if it does or doesn't, or how we can make it better for the next round of people. But you got this, friends. You got this.